There is a country the size of West Virginia with 18 million people that exported nearly $990 billion worth of goods in 2025. Not China, not Germany, not Japan. The Netherlands. $990 billion. From 18 million people. From a country that is largely below sea level and has almost no natural resources. The trade surplus alone, exports minus imports, was $118 billion in 2025. More than the entire GDP of most European countries, generated by a nation smaller than most American states. And right now, that model is under threat. From the outside, from the inside, from directions nobody saw coming simultaneously. Today we tell the story of how the Netherlands built one of the most extraordinary trading economies in human history, and why 2026 may be the year the cracks become impossible to ignore. Chapter 1. The Empire Built on Water. The story starts with geography and a problem. The Netherlands is flat, wet, largely below sea level. It has almost no natural resources, no mountains, no coal, no oil, at least not for most of its history. No domestic market large enough to sustain a major economy. What it does have is the Rhine. The Rhine is the river that connects the industrial heartland of Western Europe to the sea. Germany's factories, Switzerland's chemicals, France's agriculture, Austria's manufacturing, all of it flows through the Rhine. And the Rhine flows through the Netherlands, emptying into the North Sea through Rotterdam. You cannot move a river. That single geographic fact gave the Dutch a structural advantage that no competitor has ever been able to replicate. But geography alone does not explain what the Dutch built. Because they did not just move things. They invented the infrastructure of moving things. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, became the first company in history to issue shares to the public. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange became the model for every financial market that followed. The Amsterdam Exchange Bank invented the concept of bank deposits. The Dutch invented marine insurance. They invented futures contracts. They invented the institutional frameworks that modern global trade still runs on. The Dutch did not just trade. They invented capitalism, and they built their entire national economy around it. 400 years later, Rotterdam handles over 14 million containers per year. It is the entry point for roughly half of all goods entering Europe. Schiphol is one of the 5 busiest cargo airports in the world. More than 2/3 of Dutch GDP comes from merchandise trade, and the Netherlands exported $990 billion worth of goods in 2025, a 41.5% increase from just 4 years earlier, from a country the size of West Virginia. Chapter 2. What the Netherlands actually sells, most people think of tulips and cheese. That is not the Dutch export economy. Start with energy. Refined petroleum oils are the single largest Dutch export, worth over $50 billion in 2025. Rotterdam is not just a container port, it is one of the largest oil refining and chemical processing hubs in the world. What arrives as crude oil leaves as refined products heading to markets across Europe and beyond. Mineral fuels account for 23% of total Dutch exports. Then food. The Netherlands is the world's second largest agricultural exporter, behind only the United States, despite having almost no farmland by global standards. Dutch greenhouse technology is so advanced that the Netherlands exports more tomatoes than the entire continent of Africa produces, more flowers than any country on Earth. Wageningen University, a small institution in a small country, is ranked the world's best agricultural research institution. Every major food company on Earth has research operations there. And then there is the thing that has made the Netherlands strategically indispensable to the entire global technology industry. ASML, headquartered in Eindhoven, makes the machines that make the chips that run the modern world. Every advanced semiconductor on Earth, every chip in your phone, every AI processor in a data center, every component in a modern car is manufactured using extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. ASML is the only company on Earth that makes them. In 2025, semiconductor manufacturing equipment was the second largest Dutch export category, worth $23.3 billion. From one company, in one city, in one small country. Machinery and transport equipment account for 28% of total exports. Pharmaceuticals, vaccines, blood products, antisera contributed $17.8 billion. Computers, $16.1 billion. This is what 4 centuries of trading expertise compounds into. Chapter 3. The cracks here is where the story gets complicated, because the same model that made the Netherlands extraordinary is now making it vulnerable in multiple directions at once. Start with the trade war. When Donald Trump imposed tariffs on European goods, the direct hit on Dutch exports was modest. About 5% of Dutch goods exports go directly to the United States, but the indirect effect is far more damaging. A global trade war slows European growth. Slower European growth weakens demand from Germany, who buys 24% of everything the Netherlands exports. The Dutch central bank warned that the tariff shock could slow Dutch growth significantly, with unemployment potentially rising to 4.5%. GDP growth for 2026 is now projected at just 0.8% to 1.1%. The trade surplus, which hit a record $118 billion in 2025, narrowed sharply in early 2026 as export growth softened and competitiveness pressures mounted. Then there is the competitiveness problem that is building quietly. Dutch wages have risen sharply. Energy costs, already elevated after the Russian gas crisis, remain high by European standards. ABN AMRO economists warn the Netherlands faces reduced market share in global trade, partly due to high labor and energy costs. Companies in energy-intensive industries face rising carbon pricing under the EU emissions trading system, while competitors outside Europe do not. The same chemical and manufacturing sectors that made Rotterdam indispensable are now among the most exposed to this cost pressure. And then there is ASML. The most strategically important company in the Netherlands is caught in the middle of the US-China technology war. The United States has pressured the Dutch government to restrict ASML's exports of advanced chip machines to China. US pressure allegedly led the Netherlands to remove the CEO of Nexperia, a Dutch chip manufacturer, escalating diplomatic tensions with Beijing. ASML's China revenue has fallen significantly under export restrictions. A company with a genuine global monopoly on the most important manufacturing technology in the world, being told by Washington what it can and cannot sell, and to whom. But the deepest threat is not external. It comes from the ground beneath Dutch farms. The Netherlands has the world's second largest agricultural export sector, and it may be forced to dismantle it by court order. The Netherlands has nearly twice the European average nitrogen balance. Decades of intensive livestock farming, the densest in the world, have deposited nitrogen onto protected nature reserves in violation of EU environmental law. In January 2025, a Dutch court ordered the government to ensure that at least half of nitrogen-sensitive nature areas fall below critical thresholds by 2030, with a €10 million penalty if it fails. The government has set aside €25 billion to address the crisis. The plan requires reducing livestock numbers by up to 30% in the most affected areas. The Dutch dairy cattle population is projected to fall by 10 to 30% before 2030. Farmers whose land sits near protected nature reserves may be forced to close entirely. And here's the detail that makes Dutch farmers genuinely furious. 1/3 of the nitrogen deposited in the Netherlands comes from other countries. From Germany, from Belgium, from France. The Dutch are being forced to reduce their herds because of pollution that is partly coming from across the border. Their competitors continue producing. The Dutch pay the price for a European problem. The nitrogen crisis has brought down governments. It triggered farmer protests that blocked highways across the country. It created a constituency of rural anger that reshaped Dutch politics for years. It is nowhere near resolved, and it threatens the very agricultural export machine that makes the Netherlands the world's second largest food exporter. Chapter 4. The domestic policy problem. While all of this is happening externally and structurally, the Dutch government is simultaneously creating problems of its own. We covered this in a previous video. The government is proposing to tax unrealized investment gains, paper profits on money investors have never received, 36% per year, something no other developed country does. The investment community noticed. Elon Musk tweeted about it. International economists warned about it. The Eerste Kamer blocked it, for now. But the signal sent to international capital was damaging regardless of the outcome. Now, the housing crisis is making it harder to attract the international talent that Dutch multinationals and tech companies depend on. Political instability, 3 coalition governments in 5 years, is making long-term policy uncertain. And Box 3 reform has been deadlocked since 2021, creating years of tax uncertainty for every investor and saver in the country. The country that invented capitalism is making it systematically harder to invest, harder to hire, and harder to build, at exactly the moment when it faces the most external competitive pressure in decades. Chapter 5. The Bull Case. None of this means the Dutch economy is finished. Far from it. The structural advantages are real and durable. You cannot move Rotterdam. You cannot replicate Schiphol overnight. You cannot build a competitor to ASML in a decade or 2 decades. The $118 billion trade surplus in 2025, a 51.5% expansion from the year before, shows the underlying export engine is still extraordinarily powerful. The Netherlands became a net electricity exporter in 2023 for the first time in its history. Offshore wind investment is beginning to pay off. The North Sea wind potential is extraordinary and positions the Netherlands as a future clean energy exporter to continental Europe. German infrastructure investment, Germany has committed to massive public spending following its debt brake reform, will spill over directly into the Dutch economy as Germany is the Netherlands' largest trading partner. March 2026 exports to Germany grew 17.8% year-on-year, the strongest performance of any major trading partner. And the Dutch have reinvented themselves before. The loss of the spice trade, the Napoleonic Wars, 2 world wars, the decline of colonialism, the loss of North Sea gas. Each time, the economy found new sources of competitive advantage. The question is whether the current political environment allows that adaptation to happen fast enough. In 1602, the Dutch invented the modern corporation to fund global trade. In 1609, they invented the central bank to finance it. In 1611, they invented the stock exchange to invest in it. 400 years later, the Netherlands exported $990 billion worth of goods in 2025, from 18 million people, from a country below sea level. But in 2026, the model is being tested like it has not been tested in decades, by tariffs from Washington, by competition from Asia, by energy costs from the Middle East, by a court-ordered dismantling of its agricultural sector, by geopolitical pressure on its most strategically important company, and by domestic policies that are making it harder to invest, harder to hire, and harder to build. The Dutch have always found a way. The water rises. They build higher dikes. Whether they can build high enough this time, that is the question. If you want to understand how geopolitics and trade exposure affect your investment portfolio, check out my complete investing masterclass video. Link in the description. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe. If you enjoyed, see you next time.